Hey, in this video, we're going to take a look at how you use the new Convert4 utility, which is open source in Haxel, to basically stub out the xeto for a Haxel or SkySpark extension and function. So starting in 4.03, all of your extension definitions will have to be in xeto, as well as all of your Axon function definitions. So we're going to look at how you can take your existing code and stub that out. The first thing you're going to need to do is get your code compiling with the latest build. And then there's a couple things that you're going to need to do. So let's first take a look at an extension that has functions implemented in Phantom. So your extension is going to look like this now. If you are Haxel and you are using the lib prefix, you'll want to use the ext prefix here, and you're going to extend hx extension object now. Okay, so all of your extensions actually are going to be using Haxel APIs. The other thing that's important is your naming convention must be this. So if your extension is called event extension, it's going to have to be called event funcs. Okay, whatever your event extension is, minus extension plus funcs. Okay, that's how we're always going to resolve Axon functions. The other thing you're going to need to do is where you were using the Axon facet, you're also going to need this xeto API facet. Okay, because basically everything now is a xeto API, and we can call it over the web, or we can call it with Axon. Now, the other thing that you're going to need to do if you're using the old style of extension definitions is you're going to need to make sure that they are using the ph.lib plugin mechanism, because this is the only way we're now going to look for extensions, both in terms of the conversion tool, and also you're still going to need these defs to use the 3.0 UI. Okay, so you're going to need to make sure that if you're using the old SkySpark registration mechanism, which was skyarc.extension in your index properties, you are going to need to do this. And of course, if you do this, you will need a lib file here. Okay. Now, likewise, if we look at a resource extension, same thing. He needs to plug in via the old mechanism here. So resource extension, remember, you just have all your functions here in a trio file. So let's take a look at the tool. And that tool is basically the Convert4. Okay. And what you're going to do is you can dump the help here and see the different options here. What we probably want to do first off is dump the extensions. Okay, make sure that we're finding them. And here we can see in my SkySpark repository, I have quite a number of extensions, all the ones that ship with SkySpark. And so we're going to see this is the old name that you would have used in 3.1, and then we're going to basically try to assign a name that will be used in 4.0. Notice we're using dotted library names per the xeto convention. Now this prefix hx is used for SkySpark and Haxel extensions. You will not be able to use this hx prefix. You'll have to create your own. And we'll take a look at where you define that. And you can see these are extensions versus if you're an OEM, you're going to use the same tool for your sysmods. The function type we found, if we're running Phantom functions, notice in HVAC we don't have a function, but we do have the 26 functions we found there in Trio. Now to run this tool, you're going to need some files in your xeto directory for configuring all this. So your prefix, lib prefix here, I'm using HX because that's SkySpark standard. This will be probably Acme or whatever your prefix is for your company. And I'll be posting about that soon. And then if you want to do dependencies and stuff, for example, we've got build variables that we're defining for xeto, which I'll show you here. Okay, which is these build props. This lets you basically plug in variables into your build scripts. Okay, so the one thing you will need though is you'll need this config.props. You'll need to find what your prefix is. You can have a template header here, okay, and you can put in some macros here. This is basically the header that will go into all your files, and then you'll need this template lib for your metadata here, okay. You'll find these in your xeto directory in the build, and you'll want to tweak these, okay, for however we're going to generate code. Now, the current tool is just going to generate basically your lib.xeto and your funcs.xeto. And the easiest way to do that is go ahead and we're going to run the extension, convert extension. And let's pick an extension. Let's start off with the HVAC. This is the old name. This is going to become hx.hvac. And then we're going to run libxeto and funcs. And first of all, let's run it in preview mode. Okay. And we can see basically that it's going to, actually let's run it with just the libxeto so we can see what that looks like. Okay, so this is basically going to generate this libtrio. This is coming from my template. And then you can see it's going to take the stuff from the lib trio for your documentation, your dependencies, and basically build out that thing, okay, that your lib meta. Now, second, if we look at the functions, we can see this is what function definitions look like in xeto. So you can see here that we're going to have a signature with the function. We've got our parameters. Now, if we're parsing Axon, everything's just going to be object because we don't know the types. We'll look at here in Phantom, we'll actually might have type information here. And then this is what's called the here doc in xeto. And so basically you've got your signature and then you've got Axon metadata, which is the actual source code for your thing. So if we go ahead and run this without preview, we should see this will generate the files that we want in our xeto. Let's go ahead and look at our xeto. Xeto, and we've got should have an HVAC here, okay? And we can see this is our libxeto, and then we've got our functions that are ready to go here now too, okay? We can just test that will build, and it does. So now let's run the conversion tool on basically the event extension we were looking at. Okay, well, I'm just going to run it here and then we'll go ahead and look. So let's look at event here, what it generated. So here it generated my event extension, and then the functions we can see, these were actually reflected from the Phantom code. Okay, so we'll actually see like event read, we know that returns a grid. So we start to get a little bit of static typing. So when we're converting Phantom functions, we'll actually look at the Phantom types to try to determine the xeto static typing for these arguments and return types. Okay, and notice there's no Axon here. So how do we figure out where this function implementation lives? I will show you that real quick to wrap up. So if we go to the extension and we look at this guy, okay, in your index prop, you're going to have this property here. Okay, and this basically says this pod that's defining this index property is going to contain the Phantom code that implements things in the hx.event extension. Okay, so that tool is going to be available in 4.0.3, and we're going to start using this to get your original extension and function definitions into xeto, which is how we are going to be doing that moving forward.